My name is Ethan, and I've been a painter for as long as I can remember. Ever since I was a child, I've felt an inexplicable pull towards art, a need to translate the world's beauty onto canvas. Over the years, my small studio became both my sanctuary and my livelihood. Nestled in the heart of the city, it was where I spent most of my days, surrounded by the smell of turpentine and stacks of unfinished paintings. My work often revolved around the ordinary portraits of people passing through life, landscapes of the countryside, and still lifes of fruit and flowers. But I always sought something more, something extraordinary to inspire me. It was a day like any other when I first saw her. The marketplace was bustling with people, vendors shouting their prices, and the air heavy with the smell of spices and freshly baked bread. Amid the chaos, she stood out, a young girl with piercing blue eyes that seemed almost unnatural. I had never seen such an intense shade of blue, and I found myself drawn to her. She was standing by a fruit stall, her pale hands gently picking through a basket of apples. Her dark hair framed her delicate face, and those eyes, they seemed to pierce straight through me. As a painter, I was struck by the overwhelming urge to capture her likeness on canvas. I approached her hesitantly, feeling like an intruder in her world. "Excuse me," I said, my voice barely audible over the market's din. I'm a painter. I couldn't help but notice your unique eyes. Would you mind if I painted you?" She turned to me, her gaze locking onto mine. A small smile played on her lips, but there was something enigmatic about her expression, something that made my stomach twist with both anticipation and unease. "Paint me," she repeated, her voice soft and melodic. "Why, your eyes," I said simply. "They're incredible." For a moment, she didn't respond, her head tilting slightly as though she were assessing me. Then she nodded. "All right," she said, "but only if you promise to capture them exactly as they are." I arranged for her to come to my studio the following day. I couldn't stop thinking about her that night, replaying our brief interaction in my mind. There was something about her that felt almost otherworldly, and I found myself both captivated and unsettled. When she arrived the next morning, she wore a simple white dress that only emphasized the striking color of her eyes. I set up my easel, mixing paints as I tried to find the perfect shade of blue. She sat perfectly still, her gaze fixed on a point in the distance, as though lost in thought. "What's your name?" I asked as I worked. "Sophia," she replied. "And yours?" "Ethan," I said. We fell into a comfortable silence after that, the only sounds being the scrape of the brush on canvas and the occasional chirp of birds outside the window. But as the hours passed, I began to notice odd things. The air in the room felt heavier, and the light seemed to dim, though the sun was still shining brightly outside. And then there was Sophia herself. She didn't move, didn't fidget, didn't even blink. Her stillness was unnerving. When I finally stepped back to examine my work, I was stunned. The portrait was unlike anything I'd ever painted before. Her eyes seemed almost alive on the canvas, as though they were watching me. Sophia stood and approached the painting, her expression unreadable. "You've captured them well," she said, her voice low. "Perhaps too well." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She turned to me, her gaze boring into mine. "Do you know what happens when you capture someone's essence in a painting?" I shook my head, my mouth suddenly dry. "You create a doorway," she said, her voice taking on a strange, echoing quality, "a connection between worlds." Before I could respond, the room seemed to shift. The walls blurred, and the air grew colder. The painting on the easel began to ripple, the colors swirling as though alive. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. "What's happening?" I demanded. Sophia's lips curved into a smile, but it was no longer warm or kind. It was predatory. "You've opened the door," she said, "and now I'm free." Before my eyes, her form began to change. Her skin turned ashen, her hair darkening, until it was like a shadow. Her eyes remained the same, glowing with an unnatural light. I tried to run, but the room seemed to close in around me. The last thing I saw was Sophia stepping through the painting, her laughter echoing in my ears as darkness consumed me.